Welcome to Wyoming WebEd Radio. This is James Capty, Wyoming teacher and buckaroo for our ride. I am partnered with our lead writer, Maya Williams, UW professor, molding teachers' minds and keeping us in line. How you doing, Maya?
I'm doing great.
So, Maya, I've just been waiting to talk to you. I've got a knock-knock joke for you. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Interrupting cow.
Interrupting
Moo! It's like, I have to say, that's my 10-year-old son, Balin. That's his favorite joke in the world, and I've just been dying to share it with you. So,
well, thank you.
We're riding into week 8, the final rodeo of season 1, and we have all survived this hootenanny. Yeehaw! And so, as we get ready for that, I know that tech expert in you, we've got this question for you. What are some things that you do to keep up? And we have a lot coming at us right now. So what do you do to keep up?
Well, James, it depends if you're talking about keeping up with the laundry or the latest tech trends or educational trends, but I'm going to answer the easy one, which is the education question. And I really like to scan Twitter. That's kind of my go-to right now. There's so much there. I scan through my feed, I look at different hashtags. And what I really like about it is that you get a bite-sized piece of information and it's there when I want it. I don't have to sign up for anything. I just can look and find what I need. And I really love that it's an international space of sharing. I can find energy and new ideas. I can talk to peers and I can link to tons of different information. And so I really enjoy the different perspectives and it keeps me thinking forward. How do you keep up with this educational runaway train?
Twitter's such a great resource, Maya. I can't add to that enough. But I guess some of the ways I keep up is getting away, getting out, getting some exercise, getting some fresh air, letting our mind get right. I think that's just such an important thing to do, just to give ourselves a chance to take a breath and get ready. Well, enough. Let's get this show on the dirt road. Head them up
and move them out.
Wyoming WebEd, here we come. So please make sure you share your questions when they arise in the chat, and we will do our best to get any of those things answered. So let's give a Wyoming WebEd welcome to Brian Cox, Milken Award-winning principal and amazing student advocate, who will speak today with us about equity and access in education. Hi, Brian, and welcome.
Thanks for having me, James.
So it's a new year, and everybody's we're all first year teachers, administrators. It's just a new year for all of us. And the new year's starting with a lot of unknowns, but no surprises. We've had a training run last year when the COVID kind of snuck up on us. So what do you think the biggest thing you learned from last year was?
Well, I think the biggest thing that we learned from last year is really, quite frankly, how the digital divide creates an even further learning gap for our students. And as we talk about the idea of equity, this really presents an issue that all districts need to have in the back of their mind and kind of be formulating ideas and ways to address.
And when you talk about all those different ways about access and we think about equity, when we think about that term in a public school, because our job is to provide an equitable education for all of our students. And so what does that term equity and access mean to you?
Well, I think one of the things that we sometimes get caught up in or mistakenly phrased synonymously is the idea of equity and equality. And a lot of times folks think that equality is the most important aspect and everybody needs to get the same equal share of things. And unfortunately, when we're talking about bridging this digital divide or closing the achievement gap, we really have to focus on that concept of equity and making sure that we're able to level that playing field for everyone involved and make sure, most importantly, that we have created a situation where access to the learning is the most important piece. And being able to arrive at a juncture where the education is even attainable. I can speak to my school specifically. We have roughly last year 788 students in my junior high school in 7th and 8th grade. When we went on lockdown, so to speak, with COVID, we had roughly 450 plus students that needed to have hard copy packets prepared for them because they didn't either have a device or didn't have access to Wi-Fi sufficient enough to be able to learn. And so when we look at trying to Zoom into a meeting like we are today with the teacher for that one-on-one instruction, some learning can happen there in a pretty profound way. But if we're trying to learn that on our own by reading through a PowerPoint, that only further exacerbates some of the issues that we've seen develop over the past few decades.
Wow, you hit on such an important idea, Brian, in the sense of equal is not the same thing as equitable. And so that's not always easy, and it's not always an easy conversation with schools and communities. But getting equitable access is a big piece of this new process we're in. So I know Maya's galloping along here, and she's got something she's just dying to share with you.
Well, I've got a question about those differences. You know, you're talking about the differences of the students, but they all need access. So what advice do you have or suggestions for dealing with providing that access for students? And what did you do with your own students?
Well, in terms of providing access, I would tell you that our job as educators starts out with knocking down barriers. And first off, taking that as the philosophy, both as a principal, as a teacher, as a district level leadership, that needs to be at the forefront. Instead of saying, well, we can't do it because of this, the one thing that COVID has created for us that quite frankly nothing else could have is an opportunity. And I know that sounds a little wonky when you talk about a pandemic and opportunity, but when you look at this crisis has created a situation for us to become innovators of a new way to deliver education, a new way to reach students. And so ultimately, beginning with our students and our family members and finding out what they need, communicating with them to see how broad or how vast the COVID process has disabled that learning from these students. Once you've ascertained where your families are at, where your students are at, what kind of technology is available, then comes the hard part, kind of putting the money where the mouth is, so to speak. And if you're not in a one-to-one situation in your school district, moving as fastly to that one-to-one as you can. That's currently where my district is now. We're instituting a one-to-one student to computer initiative here in grades 7 through 12. And so with those devices, we've even gone so far as to take some of that survey data that we've created from our families that don't have Wi-Fi access, and roughly 15 to 20% of those devices we're going to be getting will be Wi-Fi enabled, so that the access to the internet isn't the barrier for these families.
I love what you're saying. You're talking about listening and empathy and really getting to know the needs of the people that you serve and work with. And what an amazing way to approach your problem. I think that, you're coming at it from a way that really goes with your definition of equity that you're talking about. You know, what do people need? And then what can I do about it? James, I think you have another question.
Thanks, Maya. And that answer leads right into this question. When we think about, we know this has been a huge shift for everybody, teachers, students, parents, all of us. So in getting ready for this year, what have you worked to front load to help all those groups?
Well, I would go back to the communication piece. I've just spoken with my staff as well as our families, and no joking at all here. One thing that I think is more critical for us to address than the COVID virus is the anxiety around the what ifs that we can't answer. I think that right now, your anxiety can drive decision making in very often a negative manner if you're allowing that to fully dictate what's going on. And so with our population in my school district, we've tried to err on the side of communicating early and often, and trying to get as many of those blanks filled in. So it's not left up to parents and guardians to figure out, well, if there's an answer, a question left unanswered, I better go ahead and fill in the blank with whatever I know to be true or whatever I'm hearing in the media. And so it goes back to making sure that you're getting the accurate information communicated out, and creating an environment where not only your parents and your community, but the students feel comfortable in reaching out to you. I've had several remind messages and calls from our students, specifically just wanting to hear it straight from me that everything's going to be okay. So I think that's the big thing in all of it.
And definitely that anxiety is such a huge deal, the unknowns. And I know Maya's anxious to ask her next question here. So hands off to Maya.
Brian, this year we're, kicking things off right now, but it's such a different year and it feels different. That energy that we normally have as teachers and students to start the year, it just feels different. So what are you doing at your school to build that back to school energy and work to create a sense of community for all the students?
Well, I think if you take it back to the basics of Maslow's, the first thing we have to do is again, focus on that anxiety and figure out how to quell that. And I think, when we talk about our Smart Start plans and being able to put those out for public consumption, really getting into the specificity, the details, letting families know that we've thought through different eventualities and how things might impact their students. And then not only that we've thought about them, but we've also found ways to knock those barriers out of the way. As we look at serving a large population of students, simple things like, drinking water become an issue. No longer can you access water fountains in the same manner that you were able to. And so being able to simply provide a student with a water bottle that they can reuse daily and wash up at home, along with obvious face masks at the governor's office, and WDE have been able to work with communities to provide for our students. But even then, just taking into account that if you have students using, hand sanitizer and cleaners, multiple times throughout the day, that they're probably going to have cracked hands before this thing's over. And so being able to provide simple things like lotion in classrooms for students to then apply as needed. And just those minor things that seem very, very inconsequential in the big scope of things really boil down to that communication level, as these people care about my kids, so I trust them. And by building that trust with your families, it enables you to not only do what's best for them, but create those open lines of communication back and forth.
So Brian, you talked about communication, and we know parents and staff in general are kind of just scared and deals with that anxiety. And so when we think about all the different communication tools, and you've kind of thrown a couple different ones out there, from using Remind to text-based things, to what do you think is the best tool for those schools or administrators out there that are listening? What's the best way to address that communication piece for schools?
I would tell you there's no one answer, and this definitely isn't to sidestep the question by any means, but I think one of the things that goes back to is finding out what your parents need most. One of the things that we learned from the spring component that we went through was that we were over communicating. A lot of times our parents, if they have multiple students at the high school level, the junior high level, and the elementary level, we're receiving anywhere from 10 to 20 remind messages in a given day. And I don't know about you guys, but if my phone's pinging off in my pocket every 20 minutes at work, it's increasing my anxiety. It's not lowering it. And so talking with families and being able to, what's our best method of communication, given these options, in order for us to not only reach you in a timely fashion, but also get some feedback from you. One of the unique things about Remind that I'm a big fan of is you have the ability to make your cell phone open to all of your families. And that's something that I've done, and people in that are my colleagues who said, "Are you crazy? Everybody now has your phone number." It masks your actual phone number, don't get me wrong. But it gives them that sense of security and knowing that, oh, if I need it, I have instant access, right? It's not that they all call me. I've maybe received 5 to 6 phone calls, even since March, from families. But if they need to in the moment, they know it's there. They know I'm accessible. And again, it's one of those things that just builds trust. I mean, we have the parents' phone number, so why shouldn't they have ours, right?
Brian, when we start to think about ways, we have a generation of parents, especially, that are very used to communicating at whatever means meets them, whether it's through social media, whether it's through text, whether it's those. And so the idea of just using a newsletter or a phone call doesn't fit everyone anymore. And I truly appreciate, and I think everybody out there can appreciate that. We've got to find a way to meet them where they are. And so we got another question from Maya jumping in here.
Well, I think we're getting to the end of this ride. So do you have any last comments for the listeners who might be struggling with establishing equity and access for their students?
I guess the one thing that I would throw out there is make sure that you listen as much as you talk, in the sense that we need to pose the questions, but not pose the questions in a manner that make people think that we've already got the answer and we're just trying to lead them to it. We need to bring those questions forward to not only our parents and our students, but our staff members as well. If you have a strong climate and culture in your building, you can navigate around a lot of these, Titanic-sized icebergs that we're trying to circumvent as part of this COVID-19 ordeal. But it all comes back down to erring on the side of putting in extra time, putting in extra communication, and seeking out opinions, making sure that things aren't done in a hasty manner or without explaining the why behind what it is we're doing. I think that would be the biggest message I would send.
So I've got that secret question for you, Brian. I just want to know, what's the one thing you're really looking forward to start this year?
I will tell you, just seeing the kids, I can tell you, having hand delivered, sorted, filed 450 packets, hand delivered them to students' homes with our clerical staff and administrative team here at Johnson, that I'm excited to have kids back again. I'm excited to help coach them through some of the emotional things that happen in that 7th and 8th grade year. It's when they just need a lot of adults to show that they care and that we're here to support them. And I'm really excited to get back to a little bit more of that.
Oh, amen to that. I hear you. And I think all the teachers out there are just excited to see kids in person, not on a screen. And I don't think we'll ever underappreciate those interactions in the halls anymore. Well, we definitely would like to thank Brian for joining us today. And we would like to send a huge Wyoming WebEd thank you to all the listeners out there, and guests and co-host Maya, Joe, and to all the producers behind the scene that have helped edit, make things all this awesome. What an amazing start to this educational adventure, and what a great tool we're creating for educators across the state of Wyoming and wherever. Oh, and wait. I'm not a man of many words, so I'll make this short and sweet. Oh yeah, that's right. Could you? Would you? Ain't you? If I ask it now, you can subscribe, and kind of like Netflix, you can get the entire season of episodes. Season 1, wherever you get your podcast, whether that's Spotify, Apple, wherever, you can subscribe and share these out as we get ready for season 2. So next week, same time, same place. Happy trails to you. Oh, wait. No, we won't be back next Tuesday. We won't be back until September 17th, ready to ride into season 2. Because we got to let the horses recover, don't we, Maya?
Yep, they're a little tired from this wild ride.
That's right. So we'll see you then. Happy trails to you until we meet again.
Take care.